Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Ball and Breakfast podcast with Wayne and Patrick, coming to you tonight with a special Chicago Bears free agency off-season slash NFL draft special here. We are going to do a very thorough job of going through, the Bears roster, what their needs are, what they may be looking at come draft time. Looking at our quarterback situation and further. We'll cover it all here. We're obviously, late in January right now, so lots of time and lots of, things to happen, I guess, along the way here. We may do another iteration of this, so, please subscribe, just so you get that next video when it comes, like, comment on anything we say, throughout the free agents or draft picks you want to see the Bears go after. We're always down to, debate in the comments section or whatever it is, but, yeah, don't forget to review, follow in any other capacity on all of our channels here. We got a couple of sponsors. Obviously, we have the Sharps app where you can, obviously share your parlays, your bets with a social media audience, across the board on that app, and as well, Tight Nutrition. You can get a discount if you use our promo code there, 10% off any of their products. So without further ado, we're going to kick it off starting with NFL free agency, which is about 6 weeks away. March 13th is when it officially begins. Just when I was looking at it, we have about, it'll state anywhere from, 44 to $50 million worth of cap space, depending on what we do with our roster and all else. But I'm going to kick it over to Wayne here to talk about the roster itself, free agents that are open right now, and maybe how he would prioritize, his Bears dollars.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. So a lot of interesting. I think this is like the most. I thought last offseason was an exciting offseason for Bears fans, but I feel like this season is really setting things up to just, especially with the two first rounders, in the top 10 like that, and all this cap space. So very excited to talk about this. But yeah, I think the first thing that most Bears podcasts, most Bears YouTube channels talk about is the roster cuts, right? So to position things up for, for how free agency is going to work out. So I think the two obvious ones that are out there are Eddie Jackson and Cody Whitehair. It looks like we'll probably be saving around $23 million if we cut both of them. I think in the June 1st cuts there. So, that could potentially, be really great for us. I mean, that's a top level talent player there that's basically paying for Jalen Johnson. So I think that's, two roster cuts right off the bat. And then I also see Travis Homer. I think he really hasn't done much for the Bears, and I don't think we're going to miss him. We should be saving about $1.8 million, which, I know that's not too much, but I think in this case, like, it just makes sense. He's kind of just hasn't really even played that much. And that $1.8 million, that can definitely just be a nice cushion, for this, for this offseason here. So, all that being said, I'll list a couple of, I guess, free agents that I have on my list that I want the Bears to eye. I kind of took into account the draft positions and like where the Bears might be drafting, say, first, second, third round, if we trade back and such, and then what the roster would look like. So I would say the 5 free agents I'm looking at right now are Xavier McKinney out of the Giants. I think he would really cap things off for the Bears. I do have the Bears re-signing Jalen Johnson. I think he's obviously the biggest free agent for us to re-sign. And I think him and Xavier McKinney solidifying that secondary. I think that's as good of a secondary, I think, as you can find in all the NFL. And they're all, pretty young too. Like Xavier McKinney, I think he's 24, maybe he might be 25 when the season starts, basically. But young secondary, very talented, and then, you have Kyler Gordon, you have Jaquan Brisker, and you have Tariq Stevenson all on the rookie contract. So I think, it's worth, taking like a 3-year, $12 million deal or something like that with Xavier McKinney there. Next one I have is Curtis Samuel at wide receiver from the Commanders. I think, great slot wide receiver. I know there's a lot of talk about like the Pittmans of the world or T. Higgins, but I just have a feeling they're all going to be franchise tagged. And it's like, hey, look, there's a lot of talent in the wide receiver position, maybe more on the outside. I think it's good to get a slot wide receiver in free agency. And I think Curtis Samuel is as good as you're going to get. He's also really good friends with DJ Moore and, from the time with the Carolina Panthers. So, I have him going for $10 million here. And I think that's a good deal for a slot experienced wideout still, kind of his prime. I think he's like 27, 28 years old. And then the center, a center I think is necessary. And I am much more in favor, especially in this year for Justin Fields, kind of like a prove it year to solidify that center position. So I'm going to pick or sign Lloyd Cushenberry. I know there's been talk, I think, about Connor Williams, but again, it's kind of a prove it year for Justin Fields. And in my opinion, it's like, Connor Williams, he's going to be injured. I think he tore his ACL or, had a serious injury, kind of late in the season. So he's probably not going to be able to play until like at least halfway through the season. So, again, a prove it year kind of defeats the purpose. So Lloyd Cushenberry, he's healthy, rated one of the best pass protection centers in the NFL. So that's going to be great for Justin Fields, who's struggled in stepping up in the pocket, I feel like. So, and then one last one is Colby Parkinson. Our offense coordinator is Shane Waldron. I think Colby Parkinson, coming from Seattle, 6'7", tight end, isn't like the most freak athlete or anything like that, but knows the system, talented, smart guy from Stanford, reliable, kind of possession wide out, decent blocker. I think he can be very valuable for the offense here. So those are, I think, the five free agents I'm eyeing on. Pat, what do you think? Any other additions there? What are your thoughts on free agency as a whole?
Yeah, no, I thought that covered it pretty well in terms of some of our priority positions that we have to take on. I like the inclusion of the cuts as well. That's something that could definitely take place. I've seen the Eddie Jackson rumors going around, so that would definitely open up some cap. Whether or not we would end up, maxing out in terms of, signing contracts to, fill up all the remaining cap we have is one thing. I think when I looked at it, I looked at maybe some of the core positions that we need to fill going into next year. We definitely need another wide receiver. I would say, a tackle could be on the block if we're, wanting to upgrade over like a Braxton Jones or something like that. A center for sure. Just looks like there's going to be a complete vacancy there. We've talked about an edge on defense. We've talked about an interior defender right up the middle. And then obviously with Jalen Johnson, we got to make sure that if we get him, that's one thing. But if we, go with route B, that's another. Looking at the money that I kind of earmarked for the offseason, just at the get-go, without making those cuts to, the two main guys that you mentioned, I'm looking at around $44 million. So I basically had four key offseason moves that I want to see before the draft, because what's really complicated is free agency kind of flip-flop with the draft in recent years, where now you kind of have to go into the free market with expectations that, your draft is going to fill up anything that you happen to miss. So I think the absolute essential here is Jalen Johnson, like you mentioned. I mean, we need to bring back a guy who's been just the stabilizer in the secondary for us. I mean, PFF ranks him at a 91 grade out of 100. I mean, that's pretty much as elite as you can get. And I feel like, most teams you'll see, winding up in the Super Bowl, they've got, just a shutdown corner. They've got maybe, a key edge or key interior defender. And I just didn't feel like in today's, day and age, that's an absolute necessity for a Super Bowl team. So whether we tag him or go full extension, let's just give him the max for the annual year. I have him at about $18 million is what PFF was projecting for him. So I just put that down for Jalen Johnson. I think second, the hard thing that I was looking at with the draft is I see a dearth of edge talent at, the rounds 1 through 3 areas. Whereas when I looked at defensive tackle, I felt that was much lighter, especially in that, that upper echelon elite talent, like the first and second round. So, I was looking around and trying to find good value, kind of balancing money versus the talent itself. And I think that a guy like DJ Reader or Leonard Williams really, stands out for me as being, an above average talent to just below great, for the D tackle position, but also still, not really nearing 30, not necessarily in their 30s, so late 20s. But I think DJ Reader, of the Cincinnati Bengals, checks off a lot of boxes there. They're projecting he could be, worth 15 to 16 million on the open market per season. So, I'd love to go into the draft just knowing that we've locked up the D tackle position, bringing on a more veteran type that can kind of anchor the Pickens and going over my head here, the Gervon Dexter,
yeah.
Kind of more youth on the front line. I think Andrew Billings did a great job last year, so that'd probably be my 1-2 punch up the gut. And then looking at what we have left over, at least in the amount of money that I have already spent, but I think the 3-4 offseason moves for me. You definitely need a wide receiver. I think even going into the draft, I'd love to have a guy who's like a depth piece. And one guy who stood out for, a pretty fair price was Josh Reynolds for me of the Detroit Lions. I feel like having a chance to watch him a lot over this season, he's kind of stood out as like their number 2, to number 3 option. He definitely has a great rapport with Stafford. And, just with the Lions' success and even them having a good amount of cap space themselves, I could see them bringing him back next year. But if there's a chance that we could bring on a veteran type like that to kind of be your number 3, hoping that you do end up drafting, a legit number 2 in the draft, I think that'd be a great depth piece for who's ever under center for us at quarterback. And then as far as edge talent goes, there's 2 guys that stood out to me that are both, way underpriced, but definitely, went above their performance in 2023. They're both Cleveland Browns, but Jadeveon Clowney and Zadarius Smith, they're both in their younger 30s, obviously have pretty big resumes behind them, but, still really showed out this past year on 1-year deals. And I think you could do a prove it deal, at least for Clowney, around $3 million. Zadarius Smith may require a little bit more, but, just from looking at Spot Track and what they kind of projected, those are guys that are, within reach. So maybe grabbing Clowney as being like the more, sensible option there might be just a good, edge depth guy that we could have before we go into the draft with the expectation that anywhere in those first couple rounds, we're going for a top end, edge rusher to pair with Montez Sweat too.
Yeah. That's very solid, and it is great because like you mentioned, going into this draft, like our defensive line in particular, right? It is pretty young. Like obviously there's the Montez Sweat, but Andrew Billings as well. Like those are basically the veterans there. DeMarcus Walker. So apart from that, like everybody's on the rookie deal. So I think adding in some free agents there that are with some experience can definitely show more of the way, especially in the interior there. It's really just billing. So I guess another name I was looking at there, again, maybe more of like depth piece or just solid veterans. Was it Grover Stewart? Played for Eberflus, with the Colts there. Like 30 years old. I think he made like $6 million last year, and he's only getting older. And I don't know what the market is for like 30-year-old DTs these days, right? But I'm sure, we could probably get him at some sort of like discount or, maybe something like of a similar rate that we can sign him for. And I think that would really solidify the defensive line. Again, like you said, heading into the draft, so we can just pick like the best available player, out there. So, but yeah, definitely like your, Zadarius Smith and Clowney as well. Edge rusher, it was something I thought about as well. But yeah, I can definitely speak about that. I guess at the draft, it just seems like, yeah, maybe Poles just wants young and athletic. I know he's built that up right now. And then obviously, yeah, like solidifying it with Montez Sweat. But if we are able to get a Clowney who's done really well for the Ravens and Zadarius Smith too, he's always been kind of a really solid pass rusher. Like that really sets us up for best player available in the draft, which I think you always kind of want, right? So, but yeah, I like those picks that you had there.
Yeah, and I think you already mentioned this about guys that could be tagged. But when I looked at the other premium positions, the wide receivers, the DNs, the other D tackles, some of the guys that are at the top of the board for each one of those positions, to me, are either like they're not quite your alphas, in my opinion, at least when we look at the wide receiver position, unless you're talking about Mike Evans. But then again, we're going on like his second or third contract at this point. You look at D tackles, Chris Jones, like he's entering into his 30s at this point. So, like, if we go max deal on a guy like that, I just don't feel like that's the best money spent unless we're getting, really into the, bargain bin for all other positions. And then Josh Allen, like you mentioned at the end, it's like he might just get tagged off the bat by the Jaguars. Brian Burns might get the same with the Panthers, but like I'm not really feeling excited about like a Daniel Hunter maybe at like $20 million for 4 years or something, 5 years. Like that might just get a little out of hand. So like I think there are, when you go position by position of need for us, like there are some really good, you know, guys that we can pull out. I feel like in true value across those positions outside of Jalen Johnson at the top of the cornerback position.
Yeah, and I think more on that too is like I don't know how. I mean, Ryan Poles, he always seems like he's pretty disciplined with regards to spending. I don't know how thrilled he'd be with like having that much like older cap space basically on the defensive line at this point. Sweat, like he's like one of our top uh paid players there, and if we were to bring like Chris Jones, like you mentioned, right, for like 30 million a year or something like that, that definitely is a scary thing, I think, for Ryan Poles, who again, yeah, is pretty disciplined. And yeah, even those edge rushers, even if we were to get a Brian Burns, like I'll be excited about that. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, that definitely is a lot of cap space. I think, obviously, kind of in important areas, obviously, like edge rusher, like it totally makes sense. But yeah, it's just a lot. I know there's a lot of talk about Chase Young, but I think I've definitely been a little scared off just because of the lack of production. I know he's young. I know he's buddies with Justin Fields and has played with Montez Sweat. If we are able to get like a prove it deal, like 10-year, 1 years or 10 million like 1 year deal or something, I might be open to that. But yeah, just the lack of production really scares me. And yeah, I think there might be some better solutions. I think draft or free agency wise for a better bang for your buck. So.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess we've got a little bit of an outline here of how the Bears might start off their free agency, with some of these signings. But I guess as we kind of move, closer and closer to the draft, we get through, the month of March. We're moving into April. What's kind of on your mind? I mean, after this point of free agency, or maybe in the next few weeks or something, what do you think the Bears are going to do to kind of get prepped for the draft? And I think the first thing that I look at is the Fields versus the quarterback to be conversation. And even just looking at Chicago's draft order, the picks that we have available to us, like what are some of your thoughts, I guess, moving, into the draft period, like those two considerations off the bat?
Yeah, so definitely Caleb Williams, Justin Fields. I think the Shane Waldron hiring was kind of smart. I think from Ryan Poles. I don't think it really tipped his hand too much because I feel like if he went with like a Cliff Kingsbury, like it's basically evident he's going to draft Caleb Williams. And that definitely might ruin like the trade value. I think of like Justin Fields and all that, but. Yeah, like it would have tipped his hand there, or if he picked like Greg Roman, then it's like, oh, he's definitely going Justin Fields, So I'm glad he didn't really tip his hand in that sense. And I think decent hiring. Like, it's not like the Seahawks were the most explosive offense, under him. I think they were like bottom half in, a lot of rankings, but I do like the aspect that he did kind of like resurrect or utilized Geno Smith's strengths more so of, which is like mind blown. Like utilize the talents of your players and the strengths that they have. So I did like that aspect, but yeah, it's not like they were completely explosive and just running up the scores, against great defenses. So the other thing obviously is, we don't have a defensive coordinator, so kind of solidifying that, I've heard Chris Harris, the former Bears safety there. I think it could at least show like what direction maybe they want to focus on more, whether it be the secondary, if they want to draft a safety, like that's could be something. If it is like Chris Harris or, maybe they go with somebody that has a defensive line experience. I think, my experience, at least my thoughts on that, maybe Chris Harris, really liked him as a player, but I don't know as much of a, coordinator. I think I just saw that they requested permission to interview the Bills, like defensive line coach. I might be up for that, Eric Washington, because I think their defensive line has performed really well and has developed young talent. And I'm like, great, we have a lot of that. So I'm much more in favor of having Eric Washington from the Bills there. And then kind of relying on the young talent like the Javon Dexters, the Zach Pickens, developing those players, and maybe edge rusher as well, that we can pick in the draft here. So, but I guess Caleb Williams, Justin Fields, like, I don't know. I am still torn. I honestly think Ryan Poles is still torn, maybe. I know it's like, I don't know, like I see Twitter is like 70% Justin Fields, and I get the whole idea of building the team first, and then there's like that quarterback over there. But at the same time, like, Caleb Williams, he's put on some really good numbers out there. He was like really good. I know they've tossed the generational quarterback, the best quarterback since like Andrew Luck out there. At the same time, I'm like, we got a lot of holes. I feel like, I don't know from the same situation. I think it's another thing too. Like, if we had a great offensive minded like head coach that has a history of developing young quarterbacks and stuff like that, and had a good system, I would feel much better, right? Like if like Andy Reid all of a sudden had the number one pick and didn't have Patrick Mahomes and stuff, like I would be like for it, but I don't know. There's a lot of question marks about. I feel like it's more so that mistrust about. I think Bears fans just have a lot of mistrust against the Bears organization as a whole, like developing quarterback talent, than more so of like Caleb Williams. And I think we take our anger out on Caleb Williams, like, he cries to his mom after losses, he paints his nails and stuff like that. He's too like he's basically just not grinding like 24/7. It seems like he's like enjoying life, right? So like I don't think it's as warranted. I get the whole Justin Fields argument and everything there. Like, we haven't set himself up for success. That being said, I think in my draft, I went the whole keep Justin Fields, let's see what happens, and trade away the first overall pick for a haul. But Pat, what do you think? Are you on Team Fields, or are you drafting Caleb Williams, or Drake Maye or another quarterback? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you 3 quarterbacks in this player comparison that I'm just going to spit out right here. All right. Quarterback A had 40 in the and just to level set here, this is for the first 3 seasons of this quarterback being in the NFL, okay? Quarterback A had 45 touchdowns to 29 interceptions, 8,500 pass yards, 1,000 rush yards, 5 TDs, and their team went 12-25. Quarterback B had 42 touchdowns to 29 interceptions, 8,500 pass yards, 900 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns, and the team went 23-18. Quarterback C, 40 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, 6,600 yards passing, a little bit less than A and B, 2,200 rush yards, significantly better than A and B, 14 touchdowns, and the team went 10-28. So I guess when you hear A, B, and C, I know that was a lot of different numbers being thrown at a time, but did anything really stand out to you among, the 3 quarterbacks in that line right there?
Yeah, so I know 3, or the third one, or C, is Justin Fields, right? If I'm correct, because I think I've seen those numbers.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I've seen that number a bunch of times, and plenty of times, and I forget. Yeah, I remember seeing the comparisons too. I don't recall those A and B, those quarterbacks exactly, but I know they were kind of like quote unquote bust or like, mid-level type of quarterbacks there, right? So, but yeah, I think at least from the Bears fan perspective, it's like, bad coaching, an offensive coordinator who is fired. And if you look at all the rankings of the interior, specifically, I want to call it specifically the interior offensive line. For whatever reason, like Ryan Poles didn't really solidify the interior offensive line. Like Nate Davis had, I think he was ranked like one of the worst, like one of the worst basically guards that played last season. And then Lucas Patrick, I think he was rated as like the worst center in all of football for pass protection at least. So like I don't know, those are pretty significant things there from a production standpoint. And I think everybody throws out like I guess CJ Stroud a lot. About how he just progressed. Like, and I called like, hey, they had nothing really, but at least you had good scheming. At least they had, I guess a decent quarterbacks coach. How much of this is Justin Fields just like not progressing on his own? Like, I've been critical about him. Like, he needs to work in that pre-snap read. He needs to step in the pocket. Like, these are like fundamental things, but I'm like, yeah, he hasn't been set up for success. And I think a lot of it is just coaching. Like, I would have preferred clean slate, like cut off the arm, like let's start all fresh and new. And then maybe I would have gone Caleb Williams. But I feel like, if Ryan Poles is really gonna solidify on Eberflus, like might as well kind of stick it through there and just build the team. I think is what I'm thinking right now. Yeah, if Eberflus wasn't here, if he got fired after this season, which I was kind of in favor of, then I would be more open to Caleb, honestly. Like, if we brought in like a Ben Johnson, right, I would totally be open to Caleb, but not with these circumstances, I believe.
Yeah. So I guess of those three quarterbacks, you were right. C was Justin Fields. Quarterback A is Daniel Jones, and quarterback B is Mitch Trubisky. And when I look at those numbers and I just stack up those three quarterbacks, like they are pretty comparable when you look at their first 3 years in the NFL. I mean, Trubisky had, more winning teams. He arguably had more talent around him, etc. Daniel Jones, more in the passing game, a little less in the rushing game, but pretty similar to what Justin, accomplished in his first 3 years too. And I just think to myself, Daniel Jones right now is one of the most critiqued quarterbacks in the NFL based on the fact that he got, that max extension. He's working with one of the most, revered offensive minds, at least before last year, and Brian Dable to come in and kind of, start that anew. Obviously, he got injured. That's always going to be a huge part of it too. But, two quarterbacks that I think when you just, don't look at them on the field, you close your eyes and you kind of open your eyes to those stats, like that's the playing field that I think Justin's like established himself at just of now. In addition, you have Mitch Trubisky, obviously came in on different circumstances to the Bears. Since then, obviously went through his three with Chicago and then passed on to Buffalo, getting to back up Josh Allen, a much, better run team organization, gets passed over the Pittsburgh Steelers and has had opportunities to spot start. And, the thing I noticed is that even since he's left, similar to Daniel Jones kind of being in his fourth year, going into year five, it's like these guys haven't progressed. They've been passed off to different coordinators. They've been through different systems, at this point, and it's like we're not really seeing them turn up the jets and things like that. I think everybody gets wowed by Justin's athleticism. I mean, his rushing ability is truly off the charts. But when it comes to passing, I think the thing that I got excited about in the draft was learning that he's an extremely accurate passer. He's like got pinpoint control, etc. And we've seen 30 picks, which was more than Jones and Trubisky in the first 3 years. And, I totally get it. The coaching sucks. The roster was pretty awful. But there's just been so much up and down in his game where, I think if he was to truly had balled out in the last, half of last season, I would have felt so much better about this whole, like, let's just go into the Justin Fields mode and try to build around him and, kind of just give him what he's always kind of needed. But I think it's a very risky game to play because at this point, like, yes, you could probably get 2, 3 first rounders. Maybe, you never know what you could possibly get in a trade for the number one overall. But when I think about it, the more and more time has kind of gone by since, the season ended. It's like, I want a quarterback who is pass first, number one. I don't want to be kind of in this game of a guy who's, more or less an athletic scrambler, and we're training him how to pass in the NFL. I think that's like the thing that I don't want to see in terms of like where we're trying to go with development. And I know for all the things that we've kind of learned about Caleb and his quirkiness, like you mentioned, it's like even if he does bring that quirkiness and whatever else it is, like I'd love to just develop him from the get go and like see how he can develop with all the skills that he's going to bring into this year. When it's like we've seen the highlight reels of him making one-legged passes, across body passes, like throwing darts, different points of the end zone. I've seen some really crazy athletic things. I've seen him scramble to a point that's, it's probably not Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields esque, but maybe more of like a Patrick Mahomes. And, when you hear Cliff Kingsbury, who's had the opportunity to coach him, say that he's a better prospect coming out of college than Patrick Mahomes and Kyler Murray, I mean, that's incredibly high praise. And, you mentioned Andrew Luck and him being, maybe the most, anticipated quarterback to come out of the draft, maybe since Trevor Lawrence. But it's like for Bears, like we can't pass up on that, in my opinion. Like we're an organization that just can't tolerate having good under center. Even if Justin Fields can get to good and be consistently good, I think we definitely need to shoot for great. And I think this would be, an absolute no-brainer for us. I think, a subsequent trade of Justin Fields, from a lot of speculation I've been hearing, it could net us at the very least a second rounder, maybe a second and another second or a third, to at the very best maybe a first rounder. I've heard Mel Kiper and others talking about would it be Seattle, would it be the Falcons, could it be really anybody else who's kind of sitting under in that first round, kind of looking, maybe it's the Raiders, just who's going to make that move, get really aggressive to go out and get a guy like Fields who, most do see the potential. But, when I matched up even Justin Fields with Lamar Jackson those first 3 years, it's like, it's not even close, man. It's like, it's like embarrassing how much better Lamar had it. Granted, he was with Baltimore, but, an elite organization. But when I look at their numbers left to right, even in rushing yards, it's like Lamar had him beat. So it's like, I just don't think he's on the same, playing field as Lamar. And I don't think that should be what we think of his upside as. I think if he can just be consistently good, mid-level type talent at quarterback, like that's to me what I think his best case scenario is, kind of moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's a great breakdown there. The interesting part was that coming out of college, Justin Fields, like nobody knew him as like a scrambling quarterback. Like he kind of developed that, I think, in the NFL. I think he's obviously athletic, right? But he kind of just evolved to be more of that scrambling, kind of create on the go quarterback, just because that's just how that was the hand he was dealt with, and he's kind of just owned it. So, but yeah, I think to your point, like I think that's that maybe where I'm maybe going or leaning towards. I think I heard a nice debate between like, do you build a great organization, a great, or just a great roster first, and then you put in the quarterback? Because, I definitely see and look around, like, yeah, you brought up the Baltimore Ravens and everything that they did, like, yeah, like Lamar went into a great roster there. They were, Joe Flacco wasn't really progressing that much, and they had a decent roster. I think they had, maybe borderline losing seasons there too. But then, yeah, they had Lamar Jackson. I think they traded up into the first round at the 32nd pick there, and yeah, they solidify that with like gave Greg Roman in there, and yeah, had a Super Bowl winning coach there to kind of help put together a roster and coaching staff to develop him. So, and yeah, the entire organization built the roster around him. The Bears organization hasn't, and I think that's the big thing is we suck at development. And if Caleb Williams really, this is an interesting discussion, right? And it would be an interesting test if Caleb Williams is this generational talent, right? That I think a lot of people are saying, then he's going to elevate basically, the talent that is going to be presented to him, and bad play calling potentially, If that's the case, though, like, I don't know why then we would just kind of beat around the bush. Actually, now I think about it, like, why don't we just like get Cliff Kingsbury? Like, hey man, come back to the NFL. You got this quarterback you say is honestly like the best quarterback you've ever coached amongst first overall picks amongst you know yeah, just a talented roster that you've coached and that's gotten you coaching gigs throughout wherever you've gone, basically. So yeah, why not, be the offensive coordinator for the Bears? I think you've already been deemed as like not really going to be a head coach potentially in the future, but if you excel, like you're going to get another head coaching, I think, gig, maybe, after 2 years or something. So I don't know. That's where I feel like the Bears, we've kind of been wishy washy, and part of me thinks it's Ryan Poles trying to cover his ass. Like the reason why he didn't fire Eberflus was, in my opinion, more so because I think he was, from what I've read, like he was the one that hired him, or at least he's kind of just spoken highly of him. And hey, granted, like he did well with the defense, eventually kind of solidified that. But I'm like, where's all the money at right now? Like a lot of it's on the defense there, like especially if they re-sign Jalen Johnson. It's like Jalen Johnson, Montez Sweat, Billings, and then all the linebackers. Like, what have you done for the offense? Like, yeah, DJ Moore, like, great. you know, I just feel like, yeah, they've haven't positioned themselves fully that well yet, and yeah, I don't know. I feel like if we do get Caleb, we're not really going to be positioning himself well for success. Maybe I am with the cynical Bears fans a little bit about all that. And it's like, hey, let's just get a great player. And then, maybe Baker Mayfield is still throwing it around her and can put up some good numbers here and there. I don't know what, some other makeshift quarterback, So, and then, yeah, maybe develop, or maybe bring in an offensive minded coach that has a history of developing, like another Andy Reid would be great, right? So, I don't know. Yeah, maybe Sean McVay like kind of like says, I get tired of the sunny weather in LA, and Matt Stafford or something. I don't know what happens there, but I feel like, yeah, there's just a lack of infrastructure for really any quarterback to succeed here, and I think that's just where the cynicism is for Bears fans, just in general.
Yeah. No, I mean it's fair. I think bringing in Waldron, like you were saying, it doesn't light the world on fire. You're not bringing over the offensive coordinator, of the Chiefs or the Bengals. I mean, if it was like the
Matt Nagy?
pinnacle offensive coordinator of
Yeah,
right, right.
yeah.
I'm trying to get to the point of like we all know that Shane Waldron isn't gonna be lighting the world on fire in most years. I think what he does bring though is really deep experience working under the Rams organization in their passing game before even going over to Seattle, and building a pretty stable offense with a guy like Geno Smith. Um, I mean, I think the thing that's going to be nice is if you do pair him with Caleb Williams. There's going to be a lot of just general, I would say, passing game experience with a handful of different quarterbacks who, Jared Goff, Geno Smith. I don't know if he had a year with Russell Wilson or Stafford, but in the same way, it's like this guy's worked with a lot of different quarterbacks, and he's going to be a massive upgrade over somebody who just worked for, Aaron Rodgers, who basically, could come without a quarterback coach and still be successful. It's like, I think he brings stability to the organization. He brings obviously a new look. We're trying to modernize ourselves and who we go after and attract as far as coaches go. I love the idea of Eric Washington off of Buffalo. I mean, an assistant head coach too, but also bringing in the experience he had with that really deep rotation of defensive linemen over in Buffalo and kind of all the success that they had. So like you continue to build in some new coaches with new perspectives. Like if we could work our way down the line. I think what I had read was a lot of the guys that we brought in to interview for the offensive coordinator role, it really wasn't about that. They were targeting Waldron for the OC role, and then every other guy they brought in was to be a specific position coach on the offensive side of the ball, which I thought was genius. I mean, I hadn't really heard much about that, coming out of Chicago in a very long time. But like you're saying, if Kingsbury would accept a role like the QB, QB coordinator role, QB coach role, like that'd be awesome because Kingsbury did have 2 top 8 offenses with Arizona as a head coach. I mean, obviously it didn't really work out. Maybe he's not, cut out to be the motivator and the organizer for the entire team. But, I think anyone could look at him and say he's pretty successful at grooming, NFL ready quarterbacks in this game. So would love to bring him over. But I think one thing to push back on is like, I don't think that keeping the number 1 pick overall turns out that we still can't have our cake and eat it too. I still think that the Fields trade will bring back a pretty good haul. I still think what we do in free agency will be pretty tactical and sharp. I think we'll leave some room for extensions for some of our key guys this year and what they're able to build on going into the future. But I don't think it's a situation where we don't pull the trigger on that number 1 overall pick trade and get another haul that we're screwed moving forward. I think that this team really impressed, I think, in the second half. I mean, really turned around the entire season, got them, to the brink of almost being a 500 team after starting off, as one of the worst teams in the first half. So, like, there's a ton that they're building on so far. I think that they are, you look at those core positions we need to fill. We bring in some NFL starters to guys that have incredibly high upside in those positions. Like, we're starting to contend for the playoffs, starting next year. In whatever route we take it, I just think that Caleb changes that entire game. It takes away this idea that there's stress that we need to go into the year not knowing how good our quarterback is going to be. I feel like he'll bring in what Fields could do, I think, in year 1 and kind of build off that going forward. That's how good I think he can be. I think he could be the CJ Stroud from last year. I think he could be, the Trevor Lawrence of a couple years ago, just in terms of what he can bring immediately to the team. So I'm excited about the potential of us just holding that pick and drafting him and having very cheap years of Caleb Willams ahead and being able to kind of supplement our team around the fact that we're paying a quarterback, a rookie contract, a star quarterback.
Yeah, no, hey, that would be a dream for sure if we are, hey, Shane Waldron, you can be the offensive play caller and everything, but yeah, Cliff Kingsbury, you'd be the passing game coordinator slash quarterback coach here, and that would definitely get me excited because they're getting somebody with play calling experience, kind of coach and a history of developing quarterbacks and a history with a relationship with the first overall pick there. And yeah, if we're able to solidify that with, like a wideout and a very talented wideout draft, right? Like getting somebody there to pair up with DJ Moore. So, but I don't know. Yeah. I think it's kind of up in the air. Like it's just fun. I think that's the idea. Yeah, we can go either way, and Bears fans are going to be mad no matter what. So, and excited at the same time. But is Caleb Williams a better prospect, better overall quarterback than Justin Fields? Yes. I think he can read a defense. I think that's one, and like you're saying, he is accurate, and that's really what you want from a quarterback. So like I would definitely be on board if we get Caleb Williams. Yeah, I'm just concerned. That's all. Just a little concerned about what's going to happen there. And yeah, it is. We were close to some of those. We were close to being like a 10-7 team, right? Like we had 10-point leads in the fourth quarter and gave them all away. So whether we want to blame Eberflus or Getsy on that, or just Justin Fields too, right? That's definitely warranted, I think. But yeah, no, we're close. We're almost there. And we're just in a great position. So, I feel like, yeah, there's just a lot of things to look forward to, a lot of unknowns, but a lot of potential that I think could happen, for this team.
For sure. For sure. I'm excited too. I think in the last few weeks, I've started to, stray away from the idea of Fields, to be honest with you. And it's not that I don't think he can be a successful quarterback in the game. I just don't know how successful, and I don't know how we get him there maybe starting immediately next year. Like, I just feel like he's a change of scenery guy at this point for me. I feel like he might be able to find that success, but I feel like, it's going to be more predicated on his rushing attack than his passing game. And then I do worry about injury possibilities with a guy like Fields, because we've seen what happens, to scrambling type quarterbacks like an RG3. We could go down the line of guys who have had some major injuries that they maybe have a little bit more balance in the running game than in the passing game. So that kind of thing just, it worries me, especially with where, we drafted Fields. I agree with you. When we drafted him, I was so excited because I thought we have a guy who's super athletic, a pinpoint passer. We watched what he did in that CFP tournament, and it was pretty, impressive overall. So I was so happy when we grabbed Justin. So I think part of the thing for Bears fans too might just be that it's that you had this buy-in, and we finally kind of built like an emotional connection to a Bears quarterback. And I don't think in our entire lifetimes we had as close of a connection with a quarterback, yeah, as we had to Justin, to be honest with you. So it's like just to move on, before we really know what he is. I think that the unknown is what's killing Bears fans. It's that we don't know. He could be the next coming of Lamar Jackson. He could be the next Trey Lance. We have no idea.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. I mean, this is like we're playing with riches, and we've never been really in this position. So I'm just excited for the draft to like kick off.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Bears fans they like the intangibles that I think that of Justin Fields. Like he fits the Chicago aesthetic or like our vibe basically. Like Caleb Williams is very much like more the California route or New York route, it feels like. And it's like I think that's where we have that affinity to Justin Fields more so of. So yeah, like just a hardworking, hard nosed, kind of stoic quarterback. I think that fits Chicago, I feel like. So that's definitely where, I think a lot of it has to do with that. And yeah, we see Caleb Williams, we see him like on GQ, videos and stuff like that. And it's like, that's not a quarterback. We want this guy that, just is always on an iPad and, it has workout videos ever so often too, posting online. So yeah, I think a lot of it is just a like the likeness of Justin Fields there. So yeah, but I'm excited either way. It's gonna be fun. So looking forward to I think what Ryan Poles eventually decides here though.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into it. We're looking at our draft boards. We can take this any direction that you really want to. I had, gone down our draft in a straight up manner, just looking at the picks that we have, with the potential of like throwing in a second round pick for, at least in my draft, it would be Justin Fields. But like, I'm happy to just give you the floor, walk through how you went about maybe one of your mock drafts or a couple, and like tell me
Yeah.
what you came out of it with in terms of talent.
Yeah. Well, no, this is going to be a really good, interesting. I mean, maybe the part of it too is Bears fans are just excited about trades, right? The first and what they can get. But I think there's a couple suitors out there that I think look pretty good. There is like the Patriots. I know they don't have a history of trading up, but hey, look, there's no Belichick anymore. Like they're free to do whatever the hell they want. I feel like, yeah, and hey, what better way to bring in a new regime and everything with Jared Mayo than like having that rookie quarterback. Hey, it worked for D'Amico Ryans over there, and it's like, do you want to go after this again generational type of talent with Caleb Williams versus a Drake Maye or Jaden Daniels right there at the 3 spot? Like, no, hey, maybe let's just go with the haul there. Get that rookie contract, and maybe we can sign a wide receiver too to help develop him. And I think they still have Smith Schuster right over there. So yeah, I mean that could definitely be one way to go. So I had them trading their number 2 pick. I had here like a second and third rounder, and then also next year's first potentially. It would be quite a haul. I don't know if they'll get there exactly, but if they offer that, again, how could you not refuse something like that? Maybe like Caleb, you're great and all, but at the same time, like we can deal with that, and maybe we can draft a quarterback next year. I don't know, but yeah, I had like a haul like that there. So with that, I had 2 trade downs here, and again, this is the fun part. So both for the first pick and the 9th pick. And I'll give some reasons why. So, I talked already about the first pick, and everybody wants Caleb. There's a lot of quarterback hungry teams out there, I think. But with that 9th pick, there's, we see, teams like the Minnesota Vikings, like, okay, hey, Kirk Cousins, hey, we had a great time and everything, but we got to think about the future. And Jaden Daniels, he might be there. He might be taking like the first like 5 picks there. 3 quarterbacks there. But then Michael Penix Jr. like he's been moving up on a lot of draft boards and a lot of mock drafts there. And then with also the Denver Broncos potentially, or also even the Raiders, depending on what this whole deal is with Russell Wilson, like a lot of quarterbacks can be, or a lot of teams can just get hungry there, and that's where I see them, maybe moving up to that 9th spot and taking like a Michael Penix Jr. and then us moving back a couple of spots. So, I had the Bears moving back here. So I think for the 12th pick and then the 81st pick here. I had the Bears getting Marvin Harrison Jr. right, and I think that's where I see there's a lot of value about getting 2 wide receivers that were one wide receiver, DJ Moore. He had like the best passer rating too. They had like a almost perfect rating passing to him throughout the season, which makes me wonder like why didn't we give him the ball more anyway? And then you have Marvin Harrison Jr., who is the greatest wide receiver prospect. And there's a lot of comparisons to this whole like Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, but this is, I feel like, a lot better situation for Shane Waldron overall there. So have him there. And then I had Leatu Latu from UCLA, the edge rusher from the 12th spot. I had him. I think he's really talented. He's got, I think, like 13 sacks the past couple of seasons. I think he makes a ton of sense. And then, I think the one thing about, Paul is right. He likes really athletic, grinding kind of offensive linemen. And I think, one thing to keep in mind, especially about this whole idea of Justin Fields, maybe getting that 5th-year option and kind of how that might hurt the cap. Nate Davis, right? I know he had a bad year this previous year. I think his mom died. Like, very sad situation there. But it's kind of business. But next year, right? If we do cut him, maybe he doesn't progress or build off from what he did last season. He is a cut candidate. I think we would be saving like $9 million if he's cut next season. So I have the Bears taking Graham Barden here, actually. Like I mentioned before, we get Lloyd Cushenberry there to be at center. So I was kind of debating between Barden and like is it Jackson Powers Johnson or whatever his name is, the center from Oregon, who's just like this monstrosity, has like really good both pass protection and run protection ratings there, very physical. Either one of those guys would be great, but I went with Graham Barden. Kind of like or cuts Peter Skoronski in a way. So like played left tackle at Duke, but has a mean streak to him, and very athletic there. And then I had a DT Ruke Ohoroho from Clemson, very physical, very raw. Again, fits Ryan Poles' scheme there, just like big physical lineman. And one of my favorite candidates too, Bucky Irving out of Oregon as well, running back. Deontay Foreman, he's going to be gone. And, with Khalil Herbert and Rashawn Johnson, like, those are like pretty physical running backs. I think we need like a speedy guy, a little bit mix of that lightning with the thunder. He's also from Chicago too, or Chicagoland area, went to Hillcrest High School. So I think he would be great, like twitchy as hell. I feel like he's like the Zay Flowers of running backs this year. So have him there. And then a couple of depth pieces. I'll just read them off here. Kalen Bola for safety at UCLA, more of that free safety type. Ben Sinnott, tight end. I do think we need some tight end depth. I don't want to rely on 40-year-old Mercedes Lewis and Tunyon, who dropped that pass too that might have solidified a win. So Blake Fisher for some out of Notre Dame, some OT depth, and then Brendan Rice, Jerry Rice's son. Hey, if we do get Caleb Willams, he could be an interesting, maybe later round wide receiver there. But big wide receiver, 6'3", 200 pounds there, can get those deep balls, and especially for Justin Fields. Like that's like I think one thing Shane Waldron's going to want to do is utilize the deep ball a bit more so this year. So had all that. But yeah, I had the trade back there, a couple of trade backs there for the draft. And I think that really solidifies this team overall, fills out all the holes, I feel like, and gets us younger, gets us lean, and builds us up for, the future next year too.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no complaints about kind of churning both of those picks for all the value you can possibly get. I mean, I like the idea of setting us up even for next year's draft. If you can get a first, some seconds, some thirds, like it's awesome, man. Like go ahead, go out and do it. Help us get into the second round this year, even if, because we're not trading Fields in your scenario. So it's like get us into the second round because there are, obviously priority positions that we need to fill. So the more bites of the apple you can get early in those first couple of rounds, first few rounds, the better. You spouting off some of the names that you did, a lot of those guys around my board highlighted as far as targets that I want to. I guess I had two different scenarios. The straight up route, and then I actually got a trade offer using a software outside of PFF. But no, overall, I like it. If we do keep Fields, getting Marvin Harrison Jr. feels like an absolute necessity. And then, whatever else could be tacked on top of that, whether it's through that first trade that you made or even that subsequent one. I'm with you, though. I think that number 9 pick could be pretty important to us. I mean, as far as a trade asset, I think even if we keep the 1-1 going to Caleb Williams, I think looking at that number 9 as a trade opportunity is a big one because I think there's a lot of edge rushers out there that could fit our system and could be worthwhile that we can kind of move down to wait on and hopefully get some value in draft capital to help us get into the second round, maybe another third round or whatever it is. So no, I thought that all made sense for sure.
So yeah, I think would love to hear your picks. Did you pick Caleb Williams, or did you pick Drake Maye? Who did you pick? Yeah, we'll want to hear about your trades and all that too.
For sure. I ran through a number of different scenarios using the NFL mock draft database simulator. You can find this on Google. PFF, for all those out there who love that tool and used it a lot last year. Now you have to pay a pretty hefty price for a subscription, be able to unlock a lot of the different mock trade, mock simulator type functions on it. So, anyways, wanted to give a plug out to that tool that's free to everybody to use online. But yes, I went the straight up route. Number 1, not making any sort of trade downs, just the draft order that we have. But on top of that, looking at the most conservative trade that we could make for Justin Fields. In this situation, I'm thinking Atlanta's number 43 overall, which would be in the second round, plus maybe a second rounder in 2025 would come to the Bears for Justin Fields. So for that, I'd have 2 first round picks at the 1 and 9 slots, the second rounder, a third, 2 fourths, and a fifth. Just looking at the straight up route, yes, at 1-1, I went Caleb Williams, kind of backing up everything we're talking about. I think he is the guy who's going to, be the new trendsetter for the Bears for their offense. I think, year 1, we'll see him kind of show a floor of what Justin Fields is. And then beyond that, I think you can just see him, develop into a top 10 type of guy. That's where I think he's, projected to be, could be. And like everyone's saying, he could be the alpha in this league. So, we'll have to wait and see, what could really look like. But just the idea of that is what I think the Bears need to be Super Bowl champions. And I think that's the ultimate goal for us. Moving into that 1-9 slot, in my straight up draft here, because there are different edge rushers, edge talent that I feel like is at least in that first, what would we say, like the first 2 rounds, I feel like for the elite guys, um, I think spanning over 2 different rounds, there are some options there. I think when looking at the receivers, there are 2 guys that stand out in that first round, and we, could have a very good opportunity at grabbing this guy who, at least when I went through the simulator, fell to me at number 9. It'd be Rome Odunze out of Washington. I mean, this guy has the size. He's very fluid. He obviously had a great year last year with Michael Penix Jr. I think if they have one knock on him, he's not as explosive as Malik Neighbors, but I think overall he'd be a great number two instantly for the Chicago Bears, and he'd come at a rookie price tag, which would be phenomenal. Going into that second round with the acquired Justin Fields second rounder from the Falcons at number 43, I'd be taking Jonah Ellis out of Utah, edge rusher. His father, Luther Ellis, if you remember him in the 90s, was a Detroit Lion. His brother, Caden Ellis, is on the New Orleans Saints. So he's got that bloodline already kind of working for him. I think he'd, get to know Noah Sewell pretty well in the Bears as far as guys with brothers across the league. But I mean, this guy graded out for a second rounder as high as Jared Verse in PFF. I mean, they say he's got great length, awareness, experience, kind of, I think having a dad who's been in the NFL and a brother that is also in there, it kind of comes with this confidence. If there is anything, he's a little bit undersized. So, that's something he can't teach himself. But in the same sense, like, I think he could play out of his shoes and would be a great guy to add to our defensive line there. Pairing with Jadeveon Clowney possibly, or Zadarius Smith, kind of somebody who can take him under their wing in his first year. Moving into the third round, luckily enough, the center of choice fell to me in my draft. So Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon, a guy who they say has incredible power, can play the center position, the guard position. They said is very consistent. If at anything, he just has a little bit less length than most centers in the NFL, but for a lot of folks, I mean, he's the top choice at center. We need one to kind of fill in at that slot. So if we got the best guy available, like, I think that's complete win right there. And then just rounding it off, I think the next fourth rounders, Mekhi Wingo is a defensive lineman out of LSU, graded pretty highly, as well as Javon Solomon out of Troy is another edge rusher option, just in case Jonah Ellis isn't what he's projected to be. Just having a little bit more padding there could not hurt us, especially on a rookie, contract. So I guess with the straight up route, that's what the first handful of rounds would look like for the Bears. I'd be super happy to kind of check a lot of boxes there, but I have another scenario I could run through, but wanted to stop in case you have any reactions.
Yeah, well, Jackson Powers Johnson, he's definitely a favorite. I think he's a fast moving. I think center. I think some people I saw like a lot of mock drafts had him like in the fifth round and all that, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's really good actually, and now he's been rated like maybe second, third round, and like he would be a great fit. It is one of those things like it would be nice to have a more veteran type of center with a rookie quarterback. That being said, if they're talented and good, like who cares, right? And I think they'll progress. And I think, Jackson Powers Johnson, he's eventually, I think, just going to be like he's going to, I think, surpass a lot of the previous centers and previous drafts. I think he's like up there, in my opinion, like with the Linderbaums or like, I don't know, an Owen Kreutz type of player there. So I think he's going to do really well. But Rome Odunze with Caleb Williams, and then I think you also mentioned like Josh Reynolds there. I think that would be a great, offense there, especially paired up with, Kmet at tight end, and then also DJ Moore. So again, so many different ways that this Bears offense can be put together. It's going to be young, but at the same time, yeah, if we add few pieces here and there, like it's going to be exciting no matter, I think, who's at QB. But Caleb Williams is going to be a lot more accurate, though, for sure. I think, if he's starting at rookie, a rookie plays all 17 games, right? Like, does he pass for 4,000 yards? What do you think? Like, because we haven't had a 4,000 yard passer in years, right, or ever. So,
I mean, it's totally possible if we're, looking at, maybe even some of the guys they threw out there, like the Lamar Jackson, Mitch Trubisky, Daniel Jones. I mean, they didn't really sniff like 2,000, 2,500 yards or more in one of their first three seasons. I don't know. I mean, looking at what CJ Stroud just did, looking at what Trevor Lawrence did in the year prior, I mean, I feel like it's totally possible that he, could find his way in the top half of the league in quarterback performance in his first year. Could he get to that top 10 mark? Perhaps. I mean, if if you are being again compared to Patrick Mahomes, a Kyler Murray, an Andrew Luck, like Trevor Lawrence, like these are guys that are generational quarterbacks. So if Shane Waldron knows how to work with a guy like that, they bring over a quarterback savvy coach in the passing game coordinator role. Like I for sure could see that happening because I think a lot of the main pieces are now moving into place for the Bears on the offensive side of the ball too. Depends on what we do with these picks and like how we form everything. But if you've got, like you're saying, more a Dunze, it's a Reynolds, a Curtis Samuel. Like we've got a lot of options, and we've got a pretty affordable, deep running game behind us too. So it's like I do think we are like on the forefront of making some really serious strides as a team, and who this is just year one of what Caleb Williams would be walking into. Who knows what could happen in 25, 26, etc. So we'll just have to see. Another scenario I just want to throw out at you is keeping the number 1 overall pick. I'm going Caleb Williams again, but this mock draft simulator offered me a trade for the number 9. And I like that you made that trade on your own end because I made this one as well. The Jacksonville Jaguars wanted to move up to that 9 slot. I'm thinking for Jacksonville, they'd probably be looking at a Roma Dunze, or maybe they're looking at a tackle to protect Trevor Lawrence a little bit better this year, but they offered me the 17th overall of the number 48, which would be in the second round, 96, which would be in the third, and then a next year's second round pick, just to make that swap. Whether or not I think that's legitimate, like could that actually happen? Like I don't know, but maybe Jacksonville gets so desperate because Calvin Ridley's walking that they just need to have, a cornerstone wide receiver to pair with Lawrence, or they need Olu Fashanu, or maybe it's Joe Alt that falls to 9, and they just want to jump all over that. It's possible. It's totally possible. But I ended up taking that. So my draft ended up being Caleb Williams at 1-1. At number 17, I got Jared Verse at 48, and this is without even considering the Fields trade. So this is just in this single trade. But I got Graham Barton at the 48. Again, looking at a guy who could maybe be a guard, maybe be a center. It just kind of depends. Jermaine Burton out of Alabama, a vertical threat, very speedy. They say in general, like at times he runs sloppy routes, but like the kind of guy who could take the top off. In general, I mean, I think that'd be kind of an exciting piece to pair with more. Jonah Ellis would come in on that package as well. So I don't know, man. I'm looking around and I'm kind of like, could we get a haul at number 9? Like, I think that's the one thing that Chicago analysts aren't really discussing a lot, in general. But, you know, I think if Roma Dunze isn't there for me and we're looking at just the edge talent, I mean, Latu seems like the cream of the crop, but he does have his own injury concerns. But if we're looking at like still on the board, there's a Dallas Turner, there's, Jared Verse, perhaps, maybe it's a Chris Braswell. Like, do we just shop that around and see like what we can ultimately get there?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I think that's the idea that the first couple of rounds here, I think it's pretty deep on both sides of the ball, the line basically, and I think that's where we need more depth on, we need some talent on, and if we are able to get one of those like 3 edge rushers there that projected to go in the first round, then I think it makes sense to at least get one of them, and then maybe a veteran like a Clowney or Zadarius Smith, right? Like and I'd feel pretty good with that line, defensive line heading into next season, because we were ranked, dead last, right, basically for most of the season. And obviously, we got Montez Sweat, and that changed things a little bit. But having just more bodies up front, I think that'll solidify more of what we're trying to do. I think on the defensive side, and also on the offensive side too. Like I think Barton could be good, but I know Jackson Powers Johnson for sure. But yeah, I think any of our interior, I think, is the what just was one of the worst rated ones. And then I know Tevin Jenkins, he had a really good season, but he was hurt for a good portion or several games there. So it's just about getting depth, getting just more talent in general. And yeah, Nate Davis his last season there just kind of killed us, and obviously Lucas Patrick. So getting as much talent as possible, whether it's free agency, draft, I think no matter what, I think it'll just be good for Caleb Williams or Justin Fields,
Yeah. I think my biggest fear going into this draft is we get to that 1-9 pick, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what's going to happen with some of our trades. But if we don't have Roma Dunze on the board, and let's say we go with that edge rusher, we don't currently have a second round pick, but we definitely need a number 2 wide receiver. And if
Yeah.
we're not going to go out and spend it on a very high caliber number 2, that could be a huge, I think, issue for the Bears, like walking into the year if somehow, some way we don't walk out,
Yeah.
with a legit number 2.
Yeah. Yeah. If we are able to move into the second round, if we do trade back, right? I mean, there are some pretty good second rounders. This is a really deep wide receiver draft. And I think like the past couple of seasons, we've noticed that the draft at wideout, it just has been pretty damn good, I think, right? We had all the wide receivers that the Packers have taken as well. And, Tank Dell, I think was like a second or third rounder last year. This year, like, I think Xavier Leggett out of South Carolina, Gamecock, right? He's kind of projected as like another like DK Metcalf, and hey, Shane Waldron, you know what that's like there, so he could potentially be a good one. Troy Franklin, I think I've seen as well. He was Bo Nix's like favorite wideout there, and he's kind of built like a Devontae Smith in a way, and I think he's a very capable like wide receiver there. And maybe some sleepers in the later rounds. I think it's like Jacob Cowing from Arizona. Like he's a pretty nifty wide receiver. I think Malik Washington out of Virginia as well. He got like 100+ balls, undersized. But yeah, if we get, I would not be surprised if we take like 2 wide receivers in this draft. Maybe one in like the first 2 rounds, and then one maybe a little bit later. I think that totally makes sense because there's a lot. Like Roman Wilson as well. I think he's projected like second, third, maybe fourth rounder there, and a lot of talent, I feel like, at wideout. So I wouldn't feel too bad. I mean, I think any rookie wideouts is going to take like a couple games for them to get in a rhythm. But yeah, there's a lot of talent here. I think pairing them up with Curtis Samuel or Josh Reynolds, I think that totally makes sense for the Bears, especially if they get Caleb Williams, right? Like they got some cash to burn, So
Yeah. I'm also looking at guys like Lad McConkey, just a
yeah.
guy who's a great route runner. Maybe a little less athletic than what you'd like to see from like a Xavier Leggett or something like that. But Xavier Worthy is also another guy who's
Mm-hmm.
pretty versatile and quick out of Texas. They're kind of knocking on him for being thin, but looking at a guy like Devontae Smith, like maybe he doesn't perform to that level, but I think there are guys that are rail thin in the NFL that are just ball hawks and incredible at moving the sticks and stuff. I feel like with Moore, who's kind of like your do-it-all receiver, definitely good at the deep ball, but like I think we would like to have like a very physical, strong type of number 2. Like I would like to see Leggett, regardless of the fact he's a Gamecock. Like I just think like having a bigger bodied number 2, like an Alshon Jeffrey type or something like that, would be awesome to have working across from DJ Moore.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect like complementary piece. Again, it's like the whole like if DJ Moore is more of the Lockett type of player, then yeah, you want that you know big physical specimen that can get the deep ball, get slant routes. Like this previous year we didn't do too many slant routes, and I think that kind of obviously hurt Justin Fields and his completion percentage. That and again not doing the pre-snap read as well and stuff, but yeah, just having a big wideout there could be really good. But yeah, I also think just a slot in general. I think we need better production out of the slot. I think, and especially the way that the NFL is going, like having a slot wideout, no matter if it is your number 1 or just a conventional slot like a Zay Flowers, like you can see that does wonders to a team, right? So just having like a good wideout there. So yeah, I think just having overall talent, no matter who Justin Fields or Caleb, it's going to be great. I think for the quarterback there, and especially if we want that 4,000-yard passing season, eventually.
Yeah. And I think Waldron's got some great experience there. I mean, worked with Cooks, Cup, and Woods out in LA, and then recently working with JSN, Metcalf, and Lockett in
Mm-hmm.
Seattle. It's like he's kind of got that experience, at least, like utilizing three receivers at a time, which is something that the Bears like would kind of cross their eyes at in like the past, whatever 20, 25, 30 years that we've been watching Chicago Bears football. It's like that almost seems impossible. Like a guy like Mooney was completely irrelevant. I feel like just as I feel like a secondary option as a wide receiver. So, we'll see what kind of potential Mooney has if he happens to move on from Chicago. But I mean, I feel like the days of just establishing like a three wide receiver set, like, are going to start to happen next year. Like, I do have confidence in Waldron just being able to like make us look like a modern day offense in the NFL.
I mean, that's the hope. That is the hope. Like he has a good background, right? Would I've liked to have seen more success at the offensive production of the Seahawks a little bit more. Yeah, and I've heard honestly some similar things as Getsy. Like he doesn't make as many in-game adjustments as you would like. So that's where it definitely is a little bit scary or a little bit like what's going to happen here. But at the same time, like I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think the Bears next, their offensive roster, I think is going to be better next season, just because, hey, look, we've identified some areas of improvement. We've made some moves here, but we also have capital, draft, free agency wise, where we can upgrade this roster offensively. So I think there's a lot of hope. It's just a matter of like, yeah, can we put all the, just put all the pieces together here, So
For sure. Well, I think we've walked through end to end, free agency, the draft, all else with the Bears. Is there anything else you want to throw out there before we part?
No, I mean, hey, look, this is exciting. I think no matter what, it's elections year, right? It's an election year. In a way, this is kind of, I feel like, how a lot of Bears fans are, right? It's like, are you a Caleb Williams fan or are you a Justin Fields fan? And who knows? Maybe Ryan Poles is like, you know what? We're going to take Drake Maye. Like, we're going to go third party. Maybe this is what's going to happen, I think. But I don't know. I think if you're a Bears fan, you're going to be excited no matter what. I think after when the season starts, I think we're all going to be forgiven of our online comments on who to pick or whatever. So I just think we'll just enjoy it. We'll see what Ryan Poles and Poles we trust, right? And hopefully we'll have a better season next year, or at least have just good prospects. Especially if we take Caleb Williams. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is like Twilight, man. Team Jacob or Team Edward. Like nobody really knows, what's going to ultimately happen here. But yeah, I mean, I guess taking a step back, I mean, for sure. I don't know. It's just been the last couple of weeks. I mean, I've been hearing the rumblings of, the fact that with Waldron, with a lot of the interviews that Eberflus had been a part of with polls, like they've kind of been posturing as if they're going to keep Fields, but a lot of the rumblings underneath the surface, especially across the NFL analyst community, the ones that cover the draft, like everyone is in on the Bears keeping the number one overall, drafting Caleb. So I started opening up to the possibility of that. And the more and more I learn about his talent, the more I'm enamored. The personality stuff, I totally see that. And you and I were talking about that months ago, just like, hey man, this guy's like wants, equity in the team, or hey, this guy, is crying on the sidelines, or whatever else it is. Like there are some things that maybe he's gonna have to go through maturity wise, but like once we see that talent on the field, I mean, I think obviously he had the Heisman year a couple of years ago, but even last year, people talked about that being a down year. And for every major passing category that he was, in, he was ranked second to at the very worst fifth. And, we're walking into a draft that could have 5 first round quarterbacks, could have, there's a lot of good quarterback depth here. So it wasn't like, the competition wasn't stiff last year as it was. So, I just think, for him to walk in day one, we know we got him for at least, what is it, 3 to 4 years on a rookie deal. Like that'd be amazing to me. But if I was to throw out one more curveball, the only other team that I would be interested in entertaining that number 9 trade for is Arizona. I mean, I feel like, they've got the number 27 pick from Houston. They've also got a very early second, a number 35. I've actually locked up on a trade with them to trade the 9th pick and a 5th rounder for the 27, 35, and a 3rd rounder in this year's draft. And I mean, I know you and I are just talking about all the edge depth and wide receiver depth that we see in that 1st and 2nd round. Like, if we could also get an additional 2nd rounder and another trade, like, we could be building a pretty interesting core of guys there. But like, I would just say keep your eye on some, second half of the 1st round type activity, because I feel like it's gonna heat up. I feel like there's gonna be a lot of trades swirling in that first couple rounds.
Yeah, no, I mean, Ryan Poles especially, like we've seen he is willing to like trade back, just accumulate those draft picks, and then like some of those will hit, and he's been has a pretty good track record, at least on the defensive side of the ball. But then hopefully now with Shane Waldron, I think hopefully he gets more input of like the kind of talent he wants there. It just always felt like whoever was in Gessie's system, it was like, does this make sense? What's this guy doing here? So now, yeah, I think maybe there's some warnings with polls now, and hopefully that like stuff like that happens. It would be interesting if I think a lot of Bears fans just want Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, how awesome would it be if the Bears were able to maybe trade up? I know it's a little bit uncalled for, but trade up and get Caleb Williams and get Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm like, that would be pretty sick if that were to happen. But if honestly, if that were to happen, if we were to get rid of like our 3rd round pick or something, and then maybe a future 2nd, like I might be open to that, because you're getting a top wideout, you're getting that generational quarterback and generational wideout in the same draft. Like that could be amazing if we were to pull that off. So I don't know, something to throw out there, something to think about if that's possible. But I don't know, it could be exciting no matter what happens, I guess, here.
I did see that scenario, to be honest with you, and I think it's a little crazy, but I mean, I saw us trading the number 9 overall with Justin Fields for, like you're saying, and the number 3 for New England, the number 2 for Washington. Like, for either of those teams to bite, I think that'd be pretty risky. I mean, it'd be pretty risky just for the fact that like you get 1 year of Fields and then you got to get him to a max type extension or something like that. Like it's pretty crazy. You'd be throwing him through his 3rd system, and I mean anybody trading for Fields, it's a pretty big risk unless you're parting with some 2nd rounders, 3rd rounders, whatever it is, because he's got to turn it around in 1 season for you before he hits the open market. So yeah, man, this could be crazy, but yeah, like you're saying, if Marvin Harrison was to pair with Caleb or whatever it is, like, yeah, it's gonna be amazing. So we'll just have to see. This may not be our last stop here on our way to free agency or the draft. I mean, I feel like with developments that could happen over the next few weeks, maybe we run this back. Maybe we do a couple more mock drafts. Maybe we talk about some of these changes here coming up. But if you're still with us out there, give us a like, subscribe to the channel. Please comment on anything we've talked about tonight. Educate us. Tell us what your mocks, have been, or what your, top priorities are for the Bears. And, we'd love to go back and forth with you here. But yeah, with Wayne, I'm Patrick signing off for the Ball and Breakfast podcast.